Hi, everybody. I'm here today with the lovely Miss Cathy Raymond. And Cathy, many of you do not know Cathy Raymond, and it's unfortunate because I have the pleasure of, you've become one of my very closest friends, especially over this last year. Cathy's always been in the shadows. Cathy's always been the person who's behind the scenes, and I know there's a lot of you out there who are one of those folks, because there's a lot of us, right? The people that stay behind the scenes. That's Cathy. And I was going to try to introduce her by her title because of what she's doing now, but she doesn't even have a title yet. You really are. This last year, you were essentially homeless. You were on the street, really. I mean, I called her this winter. She was living in the basement of a home of friends of hers, an Amish farm, and she didn't have any heat in the middle of the winter. I mean, you've really gone through it this year. And we're going to get into all that. But the point is that she really is in between. You're just about to be reborn, I think. And it's really exciting. And I'm really, really thrilled to have you talk to everybody today. I think there's people going to have huge breakthroughs today talking. I mean, really, we're doing this is an interview about, a supplement, right? But this is going to be more like therapy for a lot of people. It will. Okay. You worked with the Weston Price Foundation for how many years now? When did you start with them?
Oh gosh, I don't know the year, but I know when I finished, I had attended like 10 conferences, but I worked for them for 9. I started off as a volunteer and put their library together, and then went to the mailroom, and then one conference I heard Sally ask people to put their hands up to who could help start the Legal Defense Fund. And I saw that as my way out of the mailroom. Although I liked it. I liked being in contact with all the members and seeing all the things that were going out. And so I raised my hand and I said, well, I love startups. That's my thing. So I'd be happy to do that. So she tapped me to help her and Taryn Meekle start up the Farm to Consumer Legal Defense Fund. I mean,
what year was that? 2007, 2008, something like that?
Well, it was a year before we launched, so it would have been 2007. Yeah, we launched, I believe it was in 2008, yeah. And so that was a big joy for me to be able to do that. And at the same time, I was starting to build my actual body of work within Weston A. Price, which was working with the outreach program, which really wasn't very organized until then. Chapter leaders were just kind of trying to do their own thing, and so I wanted to get them supplies and information so they could do the best job possible. And we built that program into something really big and beautiful, like 200 a year or something like that.
200 what a year?
200 exhibits a year. And so many volunteers
Exhibits at conferences around the country?
Conferences, even international conferences, farmers markets. They're primarily health-related expos and those kinds of things, some very big and some small. So we didn't count chapter meetings in those exhibits. There's a whole lot more going on in the organization through that venue. But yeah, I was like how the organization meets the world in a large setting, let's see. And then on the other hand is like how the organization met the farming community. So I was in charge of, for 5 glorious years, of contacting the farmers and then obtaining donations to feed 1,500 people. At first it was like 5 meals, and then it grew to 8 meals because we had breakfasts and other things there too. So it was a labor of love. I love talking to the entrepreneurs and the farmers who had really had an outpouring of love for the Weston A. Price Foundation and their work and wanted to reciprocate. And it felt good, that work. That work felt really, really good. And then it didn't feel good, and I needed to pass it on.
Yeah.
And yeah.
We're going to talk about that. Let's start by just saying, how do you feel about the Weston Price Foundation in terms of the work that they've done over the years and the contributions that they've made to the world?
Oh, absolutely. Being in the outreach part of the organization, I could see people their love was whatever love was going out in the Weston A Price Foundation, and so much of that was from the chapters. These amazing, incredible volunteer chapter leaders who were leaders in their community, and using very, very meager resources. I mean, not much was coming from national, maybe some brochures and things like that, but using very, very meager resources, building these lovely community-centered groups. And I was always amazed. And that was, like I said, a very favorite part of my job is working with these primarily women.
How many chapter leaders are there now in the Weston Price Foundation? How many chapters are there? Do you know?
I have no idea, but the number 500 comes to me. That may be wrong, but perhaps somebody can put in
a few
comments.
Hundred. Yeah.
Hundreds, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is just phenomenal. When was the first chapter started? I think it was like 99 or 2000.
I wouldn't know that. Maybe
I think it was around
my time.
That. Maybe it was before that. Yeah, it was a long time ago. And
I've heard Dennis Stoltzfus was the first chapter leader, but then again, I've heard there was a Michigan group as well, starting up at the same time.
The Michigan group was big, and Ann Arbor, I think, right? And that was, I know Archie Welch and Dan Corrigan, who are now the owners of Corganic. They were in that group. I think Archie was a chapter leader. His wife Dee, who died in 2007. Well, no, 2008, January 2008. She passed away. Kayla and I just talked about that in our interview yesterday about the pulmonary embolism. That's when I met them. I met Archie and Dan at the Deidre Curry Festival in 2008. But they started out building that chapter way back when. It is a small world. It's a small community that we're in, and we're all touching each other. We're all connected, and we don't know how connected we are. And that's why I'm so excited to have you on today to talk about this, because, let's talk a little bit about, we know what you did. You barely even touched on how much you did. I heard from Victoria Block, who was one of the first chapter leaders, started back in 1999 with the Weston Price Foundation. She was my co-chapter leader here in LA for a number of years. We worked together, and she did it the whole time. She's amazing, one of the Rossum three. Busted, went to jail for raw milk.
Awesome lady.
I love her. She told me that you were the one that set up all the infrastructure for chapters and how that worked and everything. That you were very instrumental with working with all that, like you said, putting together all the organization around that. And it's no.
Okay. No, I think that probably would be maybe Cathy Kramer. She worked with that information. What I did is to organize the exhibits. So the exhibits were, really, really easy to scale up because I knew I wanted it to grow really big, and they all wanted to do plenty. So I didn't actually take care of the.
Okay. Maybe I heard her wrong. I'm sure it was me. You really did do a lot behind the scenes, and every time I'd be like, I go to the conference every year. I used to go to the conference every year, and it was the highlight of my year. It was to me, it was the kickoff of my Christmas season, and Christmas is my favorite part of the year. And right before Thanksgiving, we get to go to the conference, and I always said I get more hugs in November than I get the rest of the year all combined. And you were one of the people that I felt like was my extended family, but better than my extended family, because a lot of people they get together for Thanksgiving, and by the end of the day they're already fighting. No, it was a love fest at the Weston Price Foundation conferences. Yeah. It was people who are authentic and real and care, and you'd sit next to Dr. Nicholas Gonzalez, who's curing cancer. Sadly passed away this year.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
And then on the other side, this farmer who's like, getting, doing pastured meats or whatever. Like, you just meet the most interesting people, and people who all really loved each other and loved what we were into and what we're about. And it wouldn't have been possible without the organization that was behind it. Like to be able to do all that. So I think you and I have talked about this extensively, that we are both extremely grateful for the Weston Price Foundation and all that they've done, and for Sally and all that she has done.
Yeah, when I got over the hurt, I could feel my deep appreciation for Sally. And when I got over my reliance on her, my over-reliance on her, I'll take credit for that, my over-reliance on her to make great decisions about the foods and supplements I was taking, and when I started listening to my body, which I had to, my body started screaming. When I started to do that, then I also let her off the hook. For, she didn't make me eat anyway. She just said what she said, and I took it as gospel. Mm-hmm. I'm the one who took it and said, oh, I'm going to follow it to the letter. And I did. And not all of the foods worked for me. And I couldn't understand that with other people. Other people would say it. I thought perhaps there was something wrong with my body. Unfortunately, raw milk gives me gas. So I stopped drinking raw milk. I was a raw milk activist for all these years. And, I was... Anyway, so it wasn't pleasant to be around me when I was drinking raw milk. To say that nicely.
I talked to Kayla yesterday, and that's one of the things she said. It's like everybody's different. We all do different on different diets. And that was what Weston Price taught anyway. If you read his book, Nutrition and Physical Degeneration, you flip through the book, and there's pictures of all of these different people from around the world, and they all ate completely different diets.
Yeah, I think that's actually something interesting as you say that. It's like important to go back to the source, because Sally had her own perception of Dr. Price's work, and she built an organization with his name on it, but we might have a very different relationship with that information if we went to the source book ourselves. So that's a good point. I have never read that book. Come
really?
Nope. Nope. It's kind of like the Catholic Church, but they gave us they didn't encourage us to read the Bible so much as they gave us their interpretation of the Bible stories and catechism.
Oh my God, how funny. Okay.
So we didn't have a direct relationship.
That's funny.
Something like that. Mm-hmm.
So that is interesting. Well, I want to get in. There's so much we're going to talk about. We are 10 minutes in, and we've got an hour. So there's so much to talk about. There's two different big tracks that we're going to talk about with you, Cathy. And I want to just get into let's get into the physical stuff first, and then we'll get into the financial and emotional stuff that you went through. The physical stuff, I think, is the most impacting, and people need to see this. So what I'm going to do right now, I'm not actually doing it right now because we're recording this, but when I put the video together, I will show these pictures. So let's take a look. Let's take a look at... You're so brave. You're so brave to do this, to share this, because I know how hard it was for you. Yeah. And I know it was hard, not just because you're showing your body, because you're not indecent in any way. But you're putting yourself out there in front of all these people who know you and all these people that you worked with all these years. And I don't want to speak for you, but I can imagine how hard it must be.
I'm glad you're speaking because I can't talk right now. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard because, I am my mother's daughter, and I always like to dress up nice and look nice, and nobody could see what was going on under my long sleeve shirts and cowl necks. And nobody knew. And then when I had progressed to a point where I could feel better, I shared it because I thought at that point that maybe somebody else might have the same problem. So,
when did you first share it? When you say share it, you mean like on Facebook?
Right.
When was the first time you shared the pictures?
Oh my gosh.
Just recently, right?
Yeah, actually before all the controversy, which I thought was pretty fascinating, because, at the time I was trying to protect Dave Wetzel. I loved the Wetzel family, and I didn't want to say anything, so at first I said, the doctor says I've been taking a supplement that created this problem for me, and that I need to stop. And I contacted Dave Wetzel at the point, and I said, Dave, I can't believe this, what they're saying. I said, maybe my gallbladder is not working right, or, maybe there's something wrong with me that the supplement's not working. Because, that superfood was the go-to thing in the Weston A price. If we were having a bad day, we upped our dose. I mean, this was common knowledge. And in fact, when babies were crying, we would say, oh, have they had their cod liver oil today? We would just, that was the way we talked about it. So anyway, I kind of jumping forward on the story, but
you shared it the first time, this summer?
Yeah, it was the summer, but the pictures that you have there are from when I just had moved off the farm, and I came to my brother's house.
And that was when? That was when?
Let's say April or May.
Okay, so this spring, 2015.
Yeah, this spring. I moved off the farm. Well, I called my family and I said, I'm very sick. And there was also other things going on. There were other things going on. There was a black mold problem in the house. There was, and I didn't have reliable heat in the basement. It was an Amish-style house. And they gave me one string of electricity. These are dear friends, and I mean no insult to them. They took me in.
You had nowhere to go. I remember. I was telling you to come out here and live with me. Remember? I'm like, we got a couch. It'll be okay.
I know. I had like 5 dogs. I just couldn't do that.
I know. It wasn't good. I know. And I was like, yeah, that probably wouldn't work with the new baby. And
so these dear folks, they took me in with my 5 dogs, and they gave me a string of electricity, and we didn't have reliable heat, but there was this mold, and I tried the Young Living mold things, and I thought I had handled it, but I started having this awful, awful rash. At the same time, I had this big container that I'd gotten at the conference of the green pasture products. It's the one with the coconut oil and the butter oil and, a bunch of oils all together. And so I take a spoon of that every day. And that had a lot of coconut oil in it and a lot of, it just had a lot of different things. So I would just be very, very faithful about that. And anyway, the rash got bad. And then I said, well, gosh, summer's coming. I'm in an Amish-style house. I can't survive the summer here with this itch. I mean, all I did was manage the itch. I had one shirt I called my bandage shirt. It didn't hurt me. That was the only shirt. I mean, I would just wash it by hand every night. And so,
oh,
but
gosh.
It was terrible.
So were you taking more of the cod liver oil and the coconut oil and everything, or were you taking less, or was it the same all these years?
Well, actually, I was taking a fair amount. I wasn't taking like 2 or 3 spoonfuls, or I was taking like 1 teaspoon. I would dip it in, but it's like a gel thing. So I was taking about 1 teaspoon. But also, I didn't have any money at that time, so I was trying to kind of make it stretch. So I wasn't like overdoing it. But when I ran out of that, I absolutely went out and bought some more. I found a store that had it back east here when I moved back. So I just made sure that I kept up on that because I thought, well, my body's going through a really stressful time. It needs more of this. Mm-hmm. And I had never, ever, ever did I have the idea that was part of the problem. And it was my brother.
Well, before you get into that, when did the rash actually start?
So that, let's say end of January, 1st of February, we were kicking it. It was starting. And, I'd have one little spot, and then it'd get bigger, and then it'd get bigger. And then it went to other areas of my body. So at first I thought, well, maybe this is candida, or, maybe this is something like that. But then it went other places that you wouldn't necessarily see candida. I mean, I had it all on my chest here, all across my back, and all of my arms. Not just the creases, but the back sides of my arms and my wrists. Everything. I say this, and it, you may think it's funny, but I thought, God must be a woman, because my face was spared, and my hands and my feet. That was it. Everything else had red rash. And I was like, but, that also let me kind of hide, because nobody could see it. I could just put a shirt up to here and shirt down to here, and nobody could see it. So it also let me hide.
Wow.
So that's when I took those pictures. My brother hadn't seen me before when we took those pictures. And I said, let's go ahead and take these pictures just to document. I didn't think at that time I was going to be putting them on the internet. But I was wise enough not to put my face in the picture. We wanted to send them to the doctor that was doing some testing for me so that he was doing it long distance. So I wanted him to see the actual thing. And that's why we did it. We sent it to the doctor.
So what happened then? Your family rescued you.
Well, the first thing was, and I this is something that is so important, is that I asked for help. And I am a person, I like to look like I've got it all together.
I don't know anything about that.
Oh my gosh. You know, it's like, oh yeah, I know what I'm doing. I got it all together. I can handle this. I don't have to reach out for help. And I didn't have any money really either to do that. So,
and we're going to talk about why that happened, but
yeah.
Why the money thing. So your family took you in. You moved in with your son, and that was recently, right?
No, I called my family. They said, I said, summer's coming. I've got this bad rash. I don't have any money. Can't fix it. So they sent, I call it a SEAL team extraction. They said my mother gave my brother money, and he came and got me with a moving truck, and we moved myself out of there. And because I couldn't move back to my family, so yes, I moved in with my brother, and he was on a strict ketogenic diet for his own issues, and my darling daughter, my sister-in-law, I call her sister by marriage, and so they were like really, really strict about their diet, and we made sure I was just doing a very, very good diet, and I got worse. And that's what my brother picked up. He said, Cathy, he said, why? He says, you're doing all this, you're out of that, because I thought it was a mold.
Mm-hmm. You thought it was the mold in the house that you were living in.
Yeah, he says,
which anybody would have thought, because you moved in there like January or whatever, so that's when it started, and yeah.
Yeah, it was a stressful time in my life too. So all of that, was all. I was trying to sort all this out. So he said, "You're out of the mold. You're here in a clean basement." I was in another basement, sparkling clean. They did all the mold things before I came in. And then, and he says, "You're eating a strict diet. What's up?" And I was like, "Yeah, I don't know." And guess what? Then around that time, it was right around 4th of July or something like that. My legs started to swell. My bottom legs were like this. It's like my skin was about ready to crack, and it was starting up. And I've worked in a morgue before, part of my other life, and so I knew about sepsis, and I knew how dangerous and life-threatening it could be, and how quick it could, really take over. So I said, "Oh my gosh, I must be septic." And so
what is septic for the people out there who don't know what it means?
Oh, it's like I'm not a doctor either, but my understanding of that is that there's an infection that's occurring that is growing really, really rapidly, and the toxins from those, whether it's bacteria or virus or whatever is the items there, those toxins are too much for your body to handle, and so your body just can't, flush everything out, and you just go toxic and die. So a lot of people in the morgue had sepsis.
Wow.
Sepsis.
And and here you are remembering back to the days you worked in a morgue.
Oh yeah, I've seen it. And so so I got myself to an emergency room, and which is like against my code, really. I haven't seen a doctor in forever. And when I mention doctor, it's an alternative doctor.
It's a chiropractor or a naturopath.
Yeah. So and the nurse in the emergency room said, "Ma'am, you said this is all over your body. Could I see? Are you, I want to, it's like he couldn't believe that this rash could be all over my body, and I'm still living." And he turned back to cover it. He said, "Oh my gosh." And they thought I had Rocky Mountain spotted fever. Nobody knew. My blood work came back, my white count wasn't elevated, so we knew it wasn't sepsis. But he says, "I don't know what it is." And I said, but do you know what's happening to my legs?" He said, "I think your cell walls are breaking down, your capillaries are breaking down and weeping because of the sustained inflammation in your legs."
Wow.
And I thought, holy moly, what am I doing to myself? I've got to get big help if my tissues are starting to break down.
And you didn't know what was going on. You didn't know what was causing this, because you're eating a really clean diet.
Clean.
Everything's correct. You're doing everything right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. So he said, "You can't," and he says, "I'm not going to give you you shouldn't go to a immunologist. You should go to a dermatologist." And I was like, "Dermatologist?" Well, I did, under protest from my, my brother and everyone. It said, "You're going to go. You're going to go." I was like, "Okay, I'll go." And because I said, "Oh, they're not going to know. They don't know. They're just going to throw me some
They're
steroids.
They're going to give me drugs and
they're just going to give me drugs. They're not going to know. And this is probably, my gut and so all of that." And so I went, and she walked in. She said, "This mold is not from Rash. This rash is not from mold. This rash is not from candida. This rash is from a medicine you've been taking. This is a classic medical, medicine reaction." And I said, "I don't take any medicines." So you're like, "Oh, you're off." She said, "Oh, how about natural?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, I do take natural medicine." She said, "Some of the worst rashes I've seen are from naturals." And I was like, "Oh my gosh." And she said, "But it has to be something that you've been taking a very long time." And I went, "Holy, no." And I said, "I've been taking this for 9 years." She said, "Yeah, that would be it." And I said, "Fermented cod liver oil." She said, "You got it. Stop taking it. Stop taking it now. Don't take any more. It's going to take 6 to 8 weeks to get out of your system." And 6 to 8 weeks later, it was still moving out of my system. And I felt, first of all, I contacted Dave Wetzel after that, and I said, "Well, this is what the doctor said." And she didn't say it was my gallbladder. I was the one who said that. And I thought, well, maybe it's me. Maybe my gallbladder's not working to process it. And so I talked to David about that, and he said, "Well, share on the blogs." And I was like, well, I couldn't find the share mechanism, so I just left it alone. And I'm thinking, oh, I'm the only person having problems with this, and not really.
You thought you were the only one.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's kind of like, in Weston A. Price, everybody was drinking raw milk, but, maybe once in a while somebody would say they couldn't do it. And it was like, so, well, what's wrong with your gut? You can't have raw milk. I mean, that was me. I'm not saying leadership said that, but they may have modeled that kind of behavior, but no, I said that. So my son heard about it, and he just was adamant that I follow the doctor's recommendations and I stop it. And here I was, I thought, oh, I have to take this stuff because I'm, really sick. And I had never thought that this was the behind the sickness and that my body was not doing well with this product at all. And then it wasn't until, that posting in my Facebook was early on. I've gone back and edited it to put in the name of the supplement just so for education purposes. But at that point, I was just saying a natural supplement I'm taking because I wanted to protect people.
You wanted to protect people. You wanted to protect people. You didn't want to have to say that it wasn't fermented cod liver oil.
Yeah, and right now it's a different kind of protection. Oh, it feels really different to say that. It feels like I have to say it now. Yeah. Because before I was just kind of trying to be nice and not hurt David's business, because he'd always been very kind and generous. And so I and all of this is like, you have these people that you know and you love and you work with for many years, and then you also have this thing, and I had to separate my mind. This product is not David. This is not he and his wonderful family. This is a product, and I have a problem with the product. I don't have a problem with David.
Right.
I mean, maybe I should, but I don't. I don't have a problem with David one bit, and I hope that he doesn't with me, but he may, of course. I'm like, please don't, look at my pictures, look at my experience. This is what happened to me. And as I step more fully into my owning my story, I am like, I have to say this, I have to share this, and I have to put it on a bigger platform, which is one of the only reasons I'm sharing my ugly pictures with everyone today. And, my Facebook is like 1,000 people, not a lot of people there, but my close friends are there. But anyway, so there I am.
How long, Cathy, did it take from the time that you stopped, and I assume that you stopped that day, taking the fermented cod liver oil, how long did it take for the rash to go away?
Well, it was 6 weeks and I still had it, so I called her up. She said, no, it could take longer than that. So, and I think when my first posting, I took a picture of myself in that white outfit. Because the other thing that happened was really cool is like the weight just started falling off of me.
So you had gained how many extra pounds during this time?
Well, I would say, I was up to 168. And if you look at my pictures.
Oh my God, that's exactly what I weighed.
Really?
Yeah, I was 168 too.
Wow, 168. And now I dropped down to 132 this morning. And but it just fell off. It was like so easy. It wasn't like I was trying to do anything. So I thought, well, gosh, maybe some of this was from inflammation, because I've heard, I'm not a nutritionist and I'm not a scientist, and and you could tell I just like, I give that to other people to talk about and things like that. But my own experience here was that the weight fell off so simply once I removed the inflammation from my body. And I started to feel like I got my sexy back, and I started feeling like my mood had improved. And because a lot of us take that stuff for mood, right? But I was, when I was sick, I was deeply depressed. I had one friend I called that I told the truth to. And I would just blubber on the phone at night saying, when I die, please take care of my friends, my kids. And because I said, I don't know how long I can go on this way. And yeah,
wow.
It was.
You were ready to die.
I thought I was going to. I was preparing. I thought I was going to. And I hope my mom doesn't watch this. Yeah. But that was a hard time.
Oh my God. Kathy, I would have put the picture up on the screen just then, and I would have done that, and so people can see your after. You are just stunning, and your skin is better now. You're completely better. You've lost all the weight.
Well, I have a lot of...
I can still see a little bit, yeah.
Well, it's not so much the rash, but I do have a little bit of rash wrist sometimes, but it's my skin hasn't returned. Yeah. It's like really like paper and kind of damaged. So that'll come back. That'll, I just
broth, right? Broth. Jealousy.
Yeah.
Oh God, I'm so sorry for what you went through, and I'm sure people's hearts are breaking right now hearing this. And we're not done yet, because we're still going to get into the whole financial thing and everything that happened. And the most gracious thing about you, Kathy, is you're not blaming anyone. And you know what? I agree with you. I don't blame Dave Wetzel either. I don't blame anybody. Everybody, we're all fallible, and we're all just doing the best we can. And that's the thing that's been going through my mind, as I'm sure it has for you. I'm guessing it has, that I think about Dave and his family and what they must be thinking at night, and what they must be going through thinking about all this, because you don't want to ever think that you might do something to hurt anybody else. But I don't know what else could have caused all this for you if you stopped taking that stuff and you got better.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I didn't speak out, because I didn't have all the research and the lab work and, all the data there to sit there. But I only had my own experience. And then when I heard other people, like when I read Ron's story, oh my gosh, I cried. I still cry when I think about it, because I know that place. And I know that place, like, you just can't figure out what's going on. And then the thing that you've been doing to heal yourself is the thing that's been causing the problem. And that is such a disconnect for me. It's like the thing was such a sacred cow. Mm-hmm. The sacred food, sacred cow. It was like, this is going to make you feel better. And, mm-hmm. And I realized that I hadn't taken responsibility. There was no long-term studies on the stuff. I mean, I was just like taking it. It's like, because, and I would say, and, this is not Sally's fault, but I would say, what would Sally say? I'd say, take it, so I would take it, or, I wouldn't eat coffee or chocolate or all those other things. I just kind of followed her in a way blindly, and giving my power over to her and that information. Because I just, as you can see, I really need to come up on my science, reading and things like that. I really need to do that. Or, just learn to trust my own intuition a little bit better. So, I'm not drinking raw milk anymore, even though I'm a diehard raw milk activist. And I'm not using the fermented cod liver oil anymore. And I'm not taking any right now. I'm just letting my body, But I hope to see, I hope to try the Rosita brand. I'm looking forward to trying that, actually, and see if that works for me.
What would you say to somebody who said that, well, maybe it was just didn't work for you, but it works for other people?
Yeah. Well, what I have said, actually, one lady on the blog said, well, I've seen it work for a lot of people. And I was like, that is maybe the case. And, maybe my problem didn't show up for 9 years, so maybe that part was probably the accumulation of the inflammation and things like that. But I would suggest, if you think that works for you, go ahead and try another brand. And I can't recommend Rosita because I haven't tried it yet, but you could try another brand and then see if that doesn't do a parallel benefit for you. And then you don't have the risk or the concern of risk with the fermentation process. So I would just say, okay, do you think that works? It's like, how do you know that this one won't work better? That's kind of a fascinating thought to me. It's like, okay, you think that works, and maybe your body's really hungry for those vitamins. But honestly, my blood work showed my vitamin D levels was 31. 31! I mean, I was like, oh, I can't wait for her to look at my blood levels when I finally got all my testing done. And she said, oh, you need some vitamin D supplementation. What? And that had happened before. Here I'm paying paying a lot of money.
And you don't even have any money.
I don't have any money. Yeah.
You told me before we got on this call that your treat to yourself was to go to Starbucks and get the free iced tea because you didn't have money. That was the only drink you could get, was the free one.
Yeah.
You didn't have any money, and you're spending all this money on this fermented cod liver oil that you can't afford.
Yeah, and my wealth was measured in toilet paper. Like, when would I run out of toilet paper? Because then I would really be in trouble because I had no money. I had no income coming in. I couldn't work. All I could do was try not to itch. That's all I could do all day long.
Let me ask you something. Because we're going to talk about how you ended up in that situation of really, literally being homeless. Where were all your friends? Where were all the people who you worked for all these years, that you started out as a volunteer and you started out as in the mailroom? First of all, let's go back. Why weren't you working for the Weston Price Foundation anymore, the Farm to Consumer Legal Defense Fund? And just so people know, because they don't know, because you're not the type to toot your own horn, but I'll toot your horn for a minute. I mean, you were the one who did so much. As I said, every conference I went to, every time there was like something really cool, people would be like, oh yeah, that was Cathy's idea. The mat, the welcome mat that said, come back with a warrant at the Farm to Consumer Legal Defense Fund, when you guys would always have the fundraisers that you planned all those. That was your idea. Yeah, Joe versus Joel. I mean, I love those things I got to do. Joe versus Joel was Joel Salatin versus Joe Mercola. Mm-hmm. And you put that together. You brought Joe Mercola back into the fold after Sally and Joe had the falling out, after she wrote the really negative article about him. And Joe Mercola, Dr. Mercola, is the biggest health nutrition on the internet. Number one. Wow. Huge. You know what? I met him, and I knew Sally had a big falling out with him, and he wasn't as aware of the falling out as she was. Mm. And he says, "Oh yeah, I heard she had a problem about my krill oil," and I was like, "Well, And I see it from my outreach place. It's like I want to bring more people in. I want to bring more people into Weston A. Price, and I never understood why she had a problem with it. The science and all wasn't important to me, but I found Weston A. Price through Dr. Mercola. Really? Yes. I was doing a raw food thing. I was cleansing from Diet Pepsi addiction, and he said, "Oh, well, here's raw milk." I was like, "What's that?" And I looked up on the website, and I found the first chapter leader in Florida, who's Dennis Stoltzfus. Oh. And he said, "Well, you're lucky. Sally's coming in town." I said, "Who's Sally?" And then when I was sitting there in the audience, I had this amazing reaction. It's like, I'm going to work for that woman. It just came out of nowhere. I'm going to work for that woman. It was almost like destiny, huh? Oh, yeah. It really felt that good. And so all of that sitting in this place of the sadness of this thing that's happened is like, I did my best effort after each conference, and I just didn't feel appreciated. And actually, I wasn't appreciated. I was kind of like chastised for my performance. In what way? How? Well, usually a letter or calling me to the carpet about some behavior or something like that. And, stressful time, lots of things on the line in front of a lot of people. And I always try to do my best. But honestly, since I've had this problem, I think I'm a nicer person, and I think I would be a nicer coworker. I mean, I take responsibility for, high stress and very, very challenging job. Oh, dude, I think that's why we connect so well, because I came from the advertising industry, and I know I've been a real, B word myself. And because you get stressed out and you're trying to manage everything and run everything, and it's a lot of pressure. And Let's talk about the shame-based organization. Endearing Greatly by Brene Brown, which you're the one that got me to read that book, which really created the space for me to be able to break out just and really be reborn. Really be reborn. Thank you. Because I got that book last fall. It was right after Oliver was born, and I was going through the crash of my company and lost hundreds of thousands of dollars and last year, and have a new little baby, and I was trying to listen to Daring Greatly, and I couldn't let it in. I couldn't listen to it. I wasn't ready. And so you were the one that said, we were talking about what gave you the courage to post your pictures on the internet of the before and after. And you said it was a friend of yours who said, own your story.
Yeah.
And those are the words of Brene Brown, own your story. And when you own your story, you can write your happy ending.
Yeah.
But there's a shame-based culture that we live in, and it's not just in the organizations we're in, it's in our schools, it's in our workplace. It's just what we know because we come out of a culture of shame.
Yeah.
Now, before we get into that, let's talk about, because this is really what hooked you into the whole thing of the shame, was you told me the story about homecoming. Can you share that?
Oh, yeah. Well, I am not a scientist. I'm not a serious person, and I have I like a lightness of spirit about me. And I feel like I do my work better, and I interface with people when I'm not feeling so much pressure or criticism or things like that. So I was a cheerleader in high school, and up on the stage they announced that I was the homecoming queen. I'm like, yay! And the picture of me is frozen in time like this, but there are no tears. And so the next day, my house was egged. My family's house was egged by a couple of girls, and then when I kind of found out through the system about asking my friends, and it's hard for me to talk about this. It's funny. It's so long ago, but I asked them, why? Oh, well, because you knew you were going to get it. You didn't cry. So here's my lightness of spirit, my fun in the moment. Like, what? I'm homecoming queen, yes. And then it results in people reading into it, and then egging my house. So, lesson learned, memo to self at that point is like, stay in the background. Don't go up on the stage. Stay in the background. And that's why it's so hard to even do this, Anne-Marie, and I had to prepare myself for this, with meditation and things like that. It's like, are you ready to go on a stage again? And, sure. Damn you, Marianne Frank. Don't egg my house, ask me a question. It's like, did you know you're going to get it? It's like, hell no, that was pretty cool. I thought it was...
That's it. If they had talked to you, if they had just asked you, you would have said, no, I didn't know. Right?
No. But this is shock and awe. Like, really? That's that face. Like, it's not tears.
And in reality, they were probably jealous of you, and they were probably whatever, so they're taking it out on you. There's this thing that we do where we perpetuate shame and we spread shame, and when we live in shame, everybody else has to live in shame, and nobody wants to share their stories because we're all ashamed. Yeah. Now, would you agree that the Weston Price Foundation is what we're talking about, that kind of, shame-based culture?
Yeah. After every conference, I would come away thinking that I had, I was not enough, I did not do enough, and I had to shape up.
Why? Would you get...
Yeah, I would get, I called it my kick in the butt. I'll say it nicely. I call it my kick in the butt after every conference. For the last 3 years I did that, I got a kick in the butt. And
what was the kick in the butt?
Well, it would be a nastygram, it would be a calling to the carpet, it would be, the last time it was a 2-page letter of tying my hands and saying, she cannot go into the kitchen to talk to the hotel chef. I'm putting on a dinner and I can't go into the kitchen. You have to use a consultant. Because she wanted to tie my hands that I couldn't do it. And so I was trying to coordinate a conference with very, very, very strict, such control. I mean, when I read that letter, oh gosh, there was just such an amount of like pressing down on me. But that letter came, it wasn't just about my conference performance. I knew Sally had wanted my days to be numbered with the Legal Defense Fund organization. And because I from my place of outreach is like, man, these people are cool. I really want them in our organization. And I had the opportunity.
Like Mercola, like a lot of these people you brought in. Rob Wolf.
That's him. That's him. I met him through another chapter leader's daughter who introduced us over the internet. And he said, man, I saw that video that you put up about, it was called Farm Dinner Fiasco. And
in Las Vegas, in Vegas,
Laura Bledsoe. Yeah, Laura Bledsoe was the farmer there. And I wrote the story on that, and it was not my video, it was somebody else's video. But so he says, that made me barroom mad. And I was like, oh my gosh, look at that activism in him, it's just like waiting to go. And I was like, well, he said, let me do something for you guys. Let me just do a half a day or full day workshop, whatever. And I was like, really? Okay, sure. And so, this is my love of the work that I do, is that I get to hear people, how they love this organization and how they want to play. And I was like, sure, my job is like, yeah, let's do that. That's my job, it's like like, great, let's do that. Mm-hmm. And so he did. And so I put together this event called P3. It was going to be paleo, price, and Polyfest.
Polyfest is Joel Salatin's farm, for those that don't know.
Yeah. So we just usually did a little farm event, one farm event and really high ticket price. But I said, hey, let's make it a weekend and make it this Food Fest weekend. And then we'll bring in the paleo people. And we brought in all the paleo bloggers, and they made amazing bacon appetizers. And then we had Rob and Jenny Magruder, at a full day workshop.
Nurse Kitchen. She's of Nurse Kitchen.
Nurse Kitchen, right? So she jumped into, with her gift, and she was showing us how to make pate and all. So anyway, but then I went to Sally and to the board and saying, I want to call it P3 Paleo Price, because we're having both there, which is, I thought, wise. And I was told to remove the word price, that they didn't want to be on the same line as paleo, like as if they were equal. And that just, I even to say it now, it just makes me go, oh, what? Like, we're all in this real food fight together. And the Farm to Consumer Legal Defense Fund needs every paleo eater, and they need every vegetarian eater. We can't discriminate on it. They say we. I'm still owning it. I don't work for them anymore, of course. But, we really need every eater there to help support the farmers. And so it's just like, oh my gosh, I will do what she says, but my heart is not in this anymore. And if she's going to act that way, I am going to make sure the Legal Defense Fund has a good, strong base from the paleo community. I'll do everything I can to make sure that base is really strong, because if she's that, I would say not fickle, but, I don't know what it is, controlling or something like that, I worried about the Legal Defense Fund long term. I'm not a board member. This is just my stuff. But since I put the pen on paper to start it, I felt like such an ownership of this organization, and I felt like she was, and her policies and her narrow thinking on this matter was going to be difficult, because the paleo community is huge. They're vibrant, they're healthy, and they are in childbearing years.
Right.
It's the perfect time to get this community involved. And so my heart was there, and I was like, let's come play. And the paleo people I met, I loved. So because I said the P word,
the P word being paleo.
Yeah. Because up to then, I'd follow all of Sally's direction, and I was basically her yes man. And I can say that because now better people than me have said the same thing. But, I wasn't proud of that. But
better people than you have said the same thing?
Like Kayla. Yeah.
Isn't that interesting? How one person speaks out, and then it affords somebody else the freedom to speak out.
You're saying truth. I feel that. That's very true. That's very true. When we share our story, it gives everybody else the opportunity to do such.
And to be free.
And to be free.
And in a organization that has integrity. And I don't mean that in a mean way. I'm not saying any of this in a way to denigrate anybody or any organization. Because that's not going to get us anywhere. Because we're all in this together. Like you said. The paleos, the price, the vegetarians.
We gotta be here together.
The farmers, it's like we're all in this world together. So it's not to blame or shame anybody, but look, like the way to break out of shame is for us to share our stories and for us to be listened to and for us to hear each other. It's like you said, if you could have just, if that girl that egged your house, the mean girl, if she could have just come to you and said, did you know you were going to win? And then you would have said no, and then you, oh, okay, you know, da-da-da-da-da. But instead they came and egged your house, and it still hurts you to this day. Years and years and decades later. So, like, you know, here's the problem I have with the Weston Price Foundation, and you can respond to this, however. You know, I just feel like there's not a lot of, I discussed this with Kayla, you know, as the vice president of this nonprofit organization, that she didn't have a voice. Mm-hmm. And she said, absolutely, I did not have a voice. Is that how you felt?
Well, I knew it was a whole lot easier to go along, and you know, if I didn't agree with anything, I'd write an email explaining my position, and she just would plan. So I learned that it was just easier just to do what she said and shut up. Do what she said, shut up. Do what she said, shut up. And whether or not that's what she wanted, but you know, she shut up a creative idea maker, you know. So I just like, okay, great. I'll find somebody else in the world that wants that. And, you know, that's not to blame her. She has a definite vision of what she wants for her organization. She started it. She put all that work into it, all that love, that money, that energy. She's got it. She can have it. And the way of the world is now, I get to work for 3 people who I dearly love and appreciate, and I'm helping them create, guess what? P3, you know, revisited, but it's now the paleo, primal, and price communities all coming together.
Oh my God, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, come here. All embraced, and part of the name of the group is called the Foundation for Nutritional Wisdom. That our tagline is embracing those 3 communities. Yeah.
And you're now planning the conference.
It's all come back around, and now I get to do what I wanted to do several years ago.
That's awesome. It gives me chills. It really does. It gives me chills because, and it's not about, like, a lot of people out there saying this is a vendetta against the Weston Price Foundation, blah, blah, blah. It's none of that.
Yeah. No, we don't want that energy in starting up this new organization. We want the energy just to be beautiful and pure about inclusion.
Everybody's welcome at the table. That's what you guys say.
Everybody's welcome at the table. Absolutely.
Not only is everybody welcome at the table, but I think really what the new organization's about is Kwan. Right?
Tell us more, Jerry.
So one of my favorite movies, it's probably my second favorite movie. My first favorite movie is When Harry Met Sally. Because that's me. That's totally me, that lady that in the movie, Sally Albright. But the Jerry Maguire, I've watched it over and over and over again, and so many of the business struggles I've had over the years, really, that movie, I cry every single time. It's so there's a scene where Jerry, the only client that stuck with him, it was kind of like what we went through this last year, of just, you know, you're homeless, I lost hundreds of thousands of dollars, like, we're just like, left by the wayside. And I know there's a lot of people out there who are going through the same thing, who, you know, and this is just, it's tough. But anyway, they're talking, and he says, it's about Kwan. And Jerry's like, what's Kwan? Like this made-up word that he came up with. And it's really hard to describe it. It's really hard to talk about what it is, but it's about integrity. It's about authenticity. It's about love. It's about openness, right? It's about being engaged and being real. And I was talking to Liz Reitzig this morning, who's my other, she won the Weston Price Foundation Activist Award. She's awesome if you don't know who Liz Reitzig is. Incredible lady. And I said to her, I was telling her about Kwan, and I said, you know, every celebrity that I've ever met, because I live in LA and I've met some celebrities, they have Kwan. The real big ones have the most Kwan. The bigger they are, the more Kwan they have. And if you go back and watch Jerry Maguire, and I recommend that you all do, and Cathy and I are planning our weekend time to watch it together, but one day. But there's a scene where he wins the Super Bowl, and he's got Kwan, you know, because he can be himself fully. Like, look at Julia Roberts. Look at George Clooney. They are just who they are, right? And even Cuba Gooding Jr., he's amazing. He is who he is. We are who we are. We're not afraid. We're not ashamed. We can stand out in the light. We can be who we are. And I can say to you, hey, Cathy, you know, when you said that thing to me, it hurt my feelings. And then you can go, oh, well, I didn't mean to hurt your feelings. And then we'll go, okay. Because guess what? There's conflict in doing anything. There's conflict, and then you got to talk about it, but you got to be brave enough and have enough Kwan to be like, I'm okay. I can talk to Cathy, and she's not going to think any less of me if I share something with her. Now,
it's actually the reverse. You feel more. You feel more respect and more admiration for the person that can bring you something challenging to talk about. It's really
right? Don't you?
You do.
Right. So I think, and so that's what you guys are talking about with the new organization, is that there's going to be voting.
Yeah. Voting, a democratic organization. Oh my gosh, we are so looking forward to this part. I mean, we've got a great conference, right? But then we have this, where we're going to have the town hall meeting, and we're all going to vote the board of directors in. You know, and it never even occurred to me that, you know, Weston A. Price, you know, they've had one president of the board for their entire lifetime, and that's the same in many different organizations. And this one, they're going to hopefully even have a yearly renewal of the board. So, you know,
that makes sense. You know, like, look at it. My husband, as Seth, as you know, is on the board of the TV Academy here in LA. Mm-hmm. The people that do the Emmys, and they vote. They have to get elected by their peers.
Yeah.
And you know, that's how everybody else does it, right? You know?
Well, yeah. So a lot of people are very excited just about that part. And, you know, we have, oh my goodness, one of our sponsors, the NTA, the Nutritional Therapy Association, what their sponsorship is for them is to gift us with this wonderful facilitator coming to lead the meeting so everybody's voice is heard. How awesome an experience is that? Is that if you show up to this meeting, if you have enough Kwan to love yourself enough to share your unique vision, then there's going to have a place for that. There is a listening for that. There is this space going to be created. I can't believe how excited I am about this.
You know what? You should be, because so I read this book, and it's not coming to me. I'll put it in the notes. The name of this book, but it was about innovation, and it was by Stephen Johnson, who wrote. I think he's the guy who wrote the book called Everything That's Bad for You is Good for You. And he talked about the fact that throughout history, the times when we have the most innovation is when we're doing the most sharing. So the more we share, it's like you always have this image of this guy alone. This is what he wrote about, the guy alone in the laboratory who comes up with the genius invention. No, it's never been that way. It's like, it's always people working together, collaborating, and the more we share, the faster we grow, and the better we get, better products, better ideas. You know, we have a chance to really, I feel, and I know this is why you're here, and this is why I'm on this planet, we have a chance to really transform the world for our children's children, right?
You know, when you said this, you said, you know, we've taken it, you know, to a level. We really have. But it seems like it's stalled. Like, because and their membership was stalled at a certain level. Right. It just didn't have this explosion. But, you know, right now we're meeting, you know, kombucha's everywhere. Broth is everywhere. You know, you can see it. You can hear people talking about it. And so, but there's this huge, big segment of society that, you know, and maybe we're still at the, you know, 10 or 20% of the market yet, but there's this huge big group of society that hasn't met it yet. So if we all work together, we're likely to get there. And you know, the responsibility is not on one person, and the glory is not on one person either. And right now, you know, like even, you know, you mentioned that guy in the laboratory. Well, what about his wife that packed him his lunch, or the guy that swept the floor so he wasn't stepping on broken glass, or the electricity company that was there lighting, his. What about all of those people? They were all there in the discovery together, but they're not mentioned. They're all the behind the scenes persons, right? So this is, whether we think it or not, we're not out there alone. I was not there alone in my agony and my struggle. I was not there alone. All I had to do was speak up. And that is, in its truest form, activism. It's like, what is in me that wants to come and be shared in the world? And I have to like what's in me first before I'm going to share it. So my lightness of spirit, I'm not a scientist. Please don't ask me to write a research paper like Kayla Daniel. Oh my gosh. But everybody, I've heard so many people say, she had such a dismissive tone and things like that. And I was like, I'm going to tell you what, it was an easy read for me because of her tone, because of the lightness she put to it. I would not have been able to read it all the way through because I would just I didn't read Chris Kresser's all the way through. I didn't read Chris Masterjohn's all the way through. It was just like too much. And she had this, her writing style actually worked for me. And I just want to say that, go on record to say that, because I read that and everybody can have their own opinion, but I had a different experience with it. So I read it all. It's like, oh my gosh, it's much bigger than my little rashes. It's much bigger than that, and it could have been much more dangerous.
And it may have been for others.
Yeah,
and that's the scary part. It's not just. And I can hear my baby starting to cry, so we're gonna have to end this. And it is time. It's been an hour. I could talk to you for another 10 hours, and I know people would enjoy listening. You've got so much. You've got
I love
so
you,
much.
Anne-Marie. Yay, Anne-Marie! I'm so glad you're blogging again.
Well, I love you, and you've got so much to give, and I'm just so thrilled you're still alive.
Thank you.
That now you're given wings. We're not clipping your wings anymore. You're going to get to fly. You're going to get to shine. You are such a gift to this world, but the biggest gift that you are, Cathy, is that you are so humble and so gracious and so giving. When people watch this, it's going to give them courage and maybe spark up something in their own heart of what they could do to give back.
Oh, that would make me feel so good.
Me too, because that's the world that we want to live in. That's the world we want to live in. Instead of sitting back and saying, well, I can't do anything, I don't know what to do. There's something in your heart that's telling you, oh, I could do something. I could maybe, participate in this somehow. So everybody's welcome at the table. We'll see you in November 21st at the Foundation for Nutritional Wisdom first annual conference. And for those of you who can't make it, you can get the recordings, and that makes you a member. It makes you a founding member when you order the recordings for, what is it, only $57 or $47?
It's $47 for recording, and you become a member when you purchase that. So, you can watch from afar. If you don't want to, if you feel like you're hanging back and you don't want to join in now, that's understandable, because everybody comes to this in their own time, in their own way. But it seems to me that this is like a coming home, and that's just coming home to ourselves and to our real, authentic selves. And we come and say, okay, I want to play in a different pool. I want to play a different game, and I want to have a vote, and my vote counts. So I hope to see everybody there, and I'm glad you're coming in, Marie.
Okay, and on that note, can you hear this baby crying? I gotta go. I don't know if you can hear him, but he's definitely needs to be picked up. Love you, Cathy. Thank you. Thank you for your bravery. And thank you for your Kwan.
Go Kwan, goody girl. I can't even speak. She's got me speechless. Bye.
Love you. Bye.